Sorry, I'm in a grainy little box here. My real camera ran out of batteries, so I'm just filming this on my laptop. Apocalypse thoughts with Matt. To begin with, am healthy, safe, etc. I'm not at my place in LA. I'm in an Airbnb, and to be relatively doom and gloom, but I don't mean it to be. And I really only want to communicate things to you that I think are helpful to think about, and what I've been thinking about in the back of my head. So I also haven't been really watching anybody else's videos, so I don't know if this is a conversation that's already raging and this is what everybody's saying, or if I'm going to be alone or relatively alone in saying this. But I think the picture of the future of reselling is really grainy at best and potentially pretty desperate and pretty foreboding. And that's where I'm focusing most of my attention, not because I like catastrophic thinking, but because I'm interested in being able to support myself and remain relatively autonomous and not have to work in a service industry job or a manual labor job. Not that there is anything wrong with either of those things. In fact, service industry people, I've said this to a few people, I think people who are working at grocery stores, garbage people, people working at the post office, etc. I think these people should be regarded as heroes. They're not there, a lot of them, of their own free will. They're in a bad economic situation. They're being forced to make a potentially life and death choice, and they are holding our society together in its darkest time, really, probably since the first Great Depression or the Second World War. And these people are entitled to as much of a hero's welcome as anybody else, who we have venerated over the course of our history. When I'm using terms like Second Great Depression, there's a reason, and it's not just sensationalism, and it's not just my opinion. This is the opinion of a lot of very serious economists who are saying that the warning signs are here, and they're really bad, really, really bad, and we could be looking at years of conditions that are much worse than the 2008 crash and the ensuing recession that could be comparable or in fact worse than the original Great Depression, potentially a 30% unemployment rate. And there is really no scenario in which that is true, and also simultaneously our lives as are familiar to us are still able to operate. So the rules are changing right in front of us, under our feet, and the world is shifting, and it's potentially going to be a really dark time, and it's important to be honest about that. And maybe everything will be fine. Maybe everything will go back to normal. Maybe coronavirus will come and go, and the economy will bounce back somehow, and it'll be business as usual. Or maybe all of the bad things that I'm talking about are going to happen, and it'll actually end up being favorable for online reselling. Maybe eBay will boom because people change their buying habits, etc. Both of those things are possible. What I think is more plausible is that it's going to be more and more difficult for small-time sellers like most of us to continue to be able to make a living in the way that we have been. I think it's just going to become harder, and the profits are going to become narrower and narrower, and I genuinely don't know if it's going to be viable. Why am I saying this? I think there's a credible threat posed by that number of 30% unemployment. I think that is a very, very salient detail in all of our lives. In terms of reselling, I think there's going to be a big drop off in stuff that's getting sold and stuff that's getting donated. Sold at garage sales that's worth anything, donated that's worth anything. I think people are going to be a lot more conscious of the things that they have and what they're worth, more reluctant to part with them. And there's going to be a lot more competition for this stuff, both in terms of resellers, the general population, and the thrift stores themselves, who are going to be screening stuff more aggressively because they're not interested in making less money, and people are not interested in diminishing their level of comfort that they're used to. Understandably so. So it's going to be a lot of really serious pressure put especially on thrift stores that could potentially crush them and squeeze us out of the equation. Um, I also think that our margins are going to get pretty small. I think it's very reasonable to think that the post office could raise their prices. It's reasonable to think that thrift stores may raise their prices. It's reasonable to think that these selling platforms can raise their fees. And the picture is already a narrowing aperture of an eye of the needle to thread for us as resellers. I mean, it's already been hard. And again, I'm not saying this just for the sake of doom and gloom, because I'm going to tell you my ideas of how I think this can be compensated for potentially. I just think it's going to be really helpful to start thinking proactively about changing your business model and not taking certain things for granted, because I also don't know that there will be very much demand for a lot of the stuff that we rely on to make money. Before all of this happened, 80% of the stuff on eBay sold for under 20 bucks. With the economy becoming what it's becoming, it's pretty safe to assume that that number is going to expand, and that this top echelon of more expensive stuff that people are buying is going to shrink down. It's always going to be there. People are always going to be making investments in stuff that's more expensive, or making not fully rational buying decisions. Like today, I sold something for $100 that really has no utility at all. And I think, at least for a while, that's going to continue to be the case because people are still living in the old world. But how long that's going to last, I don't know. Probably not for that much longer. So in terms of reselling, I think what's going to be more viable is wholesaling. So people who already have relationships with wholesalers who can get stuff for really cheap and sell it. And there's already a demand for it, and it's something that is inherently going to hold value for people. Cleaning supplies is a good example that's at the front of a lot of people's minds right now. Stuff like that, I think that's pretty safe. I think retail and online arbitrage are going to become as hard as thrift stores. I think the competition is going to be really, really intense as more and more people are put in a position where they have to come up with a way to make money. And lo and behold, there is this giant wealth of knowledge on YouTube of how to make quick cash from home, and reselling is at the top of that list. There's going to be a whole lot of affiliate marketers showing up, a whole lot of drop shippers showing up, and on and on. And these forms of arbitrage that we're used to live in that family of pastimes. So people that already have a ton of inventory built up, people that have stores in the 5 to 10 to 15,000 plus range of items already listed for sale, are probably going to be relatively secure. People like me who I typically have like between 500 and 700 items active at any given time. I think that puts us in a really precarious situation. And how to compensate for all of this? Obviously, wait and see what happens, because I could be pulling all of this completely out of my ass, and I hope that I'm completely wrong about all of this. And like I said before, maybe it's the exact opposite. Maybe this is a complete windfall for for thrifters, etc., people that shop and do arbitrage from swap meets and garage sales and stuff. Maybe it'll be great because people will be trying to make cash for the immediate future, and that'll be sustainable. Um, I think the smartest thing to do right now, as much as it really truly hurts me to say this, because I'm really proud of what I've done with reselling, and I'm really attached. Um, sorry. I'm really proud of my business and what I've managed to accomplish under my own power, and it's really the first time in my life I've felt and been autonomous, and the first time I've been able to do work that I'm really truly proud of, and that I don't feel on some level humiliated or exploited by, and it's been a real joy to do that. So I'm going to do it for as long as I can in the way that I know how to do it, and I'm certainly not just going to happily relinquish it and move on to something. But reality is reality, and reality is getting scary, and it's time to consider other means of making income that are going to make you safer, that are going to give you a better fighting chance at having a steady income and a predictable income, that's going to keep you and the people that you care about secure, relatively secure in the future, because this is a mortal threat. This is really, really, really serious. So I have three friends who are software engineers, and all of them unanimously tell me that computer programming is going to be a good place to be, that there's still jobs, there's going to be jobs, and it's a safe zone in terms of recessions and depressions, that there's still a ton of demand for it. So I've been using this quarantine time to learn JavaScript. I've also been thinking about brushing up on my copywriting. Copywriting is writing for advertisements, commercials, which is work I don't enjoy, but it's something that I am unfortunately good at, and I have a resume behind. And I think skills like these that you can learn remotely over the internet during this period of time that we all have that's been imposed on us, I think that is potentially going to be a better use of time than circling the wagons around reselling and being married to it, because you have to be ready. You have to be ready to adjust, because if you don't adjust, you could get flattened. So I think it's not an unwise thing to undertake projects like this instead of maybe succumbing to the temptation to just watch movies all day and to be passive and hopeless. I certainly feel better, and I hope that that resonates with you. And if it's not programming, something that you can do remotely. Learn Photoshop. Learn what's the Adobe film editing, video editing suite. People don't use Final Cut anymore. Stuff like this. Learn another language. Learn Spanish. Learn Mandarin. Learn German. Things that you can learn that aren't directly related to reselling, which is a skill that you already have and will continue to have, that will make you more employable and more valuable to people. Learn a skill that during a time of extreme material and resource scarcity will still be worth enough to somebody with resources to turn those resources over to you in exchange. what can you do? What can you train up on that is so valuable to someone that they will give you enough money to have a comfortable life during a period of time where comfortable lives are hard to come by potentially. I think there's a really strong tendency that I've seen among a lot of people who do reselling to kind of hand wave away a lot of stuff and dig their heels into the ground and say, these things come and go and I'll still be standing and I'll find a way to adapt. And that could very well be true. But don't downplay the seriousness of this situation. And don't put your head in the sand because it's really serious. So I hope I'm wrong about all of this. And I hope you're safe. Hope you're healthy. And I hope to be wrong. Thanks.